see happening in digital businesses already. So if you look at social networks, Facebook started with a lot more text-based sharing of posts. Instagram was a lot more about pictures. That's actually the area they grew into. TikTok was a lot about short videos. In Snapchat, a lot more about AR lenses. And now gaming is the new social network where Minecraft, Roblox, PUBG, Fortnite are actually the places where Gen Z hang out. So immersion has already been improving across all digital businesses. And even if you take businesses like something as utility oriented like payments through UPI. So Google Pay did this really well, where by doing payments, they really gamified it, right? You would get scratch cards for rewards. And the idea to get scratch cards rather than just tell you that, hey, for every 10 payments you make, you're going to get X rupees free, is that the scratch card gets you this feeling of excitement, right? The unknown, the fact that you do not know what's going to be behind the scratch card. You could not maybe win something, but you could win something big, right? Like I'll compare it to an experience. I recently went to a safari and I was thinking, what's the difference between now? A lot of zoos are much open, right? Like particularly zoos in Singapore, Canada, they are much more open zoos. You don't see these animals in the cage. But the advantage of a safari, weirdly, is that you do not know whether you're going to see a tiger or not. So there is an exhilaration and a feeling of the unknown, which makes it a lot more immersive, much like the scratch cards. They have also done like levels and badges for making UPI payments. And the interesting thing is that we all crave sort of improving our status and getting more, right? So even for things like UPI payments, someone telling you that, oh, now you have made 30 more payments than before, we are giving you an additional level and a badge, shouldn't really mean anything, but we still crave it. So this immersion, both from social network, both from utility businesses, edtech, has been increasing. And obviously metaverse is going to gamify across the board everything, right? I don't think it's going to be VR related. I think it's going to be still mobile first because VR is very expensive. The headsets, bodysuits, very prohibitive for now, has been around for 10 years. This technology has been around for 10 years. We haven't really seen that much of an improvement. And our vision is that we are still going to experience the metaverse through our mobile devices, at least for the next 5 years. And it will not be more VR, which a lot of people really believe, right? Like a lot of people, including Facebook, are of the view that we're going to start doing everything through VR. We strongly believe that that's not going to be the case. The second is ownership. Ownership, again, with decentralization empowered by the blockchain, is again a trend that we have been seeing over the last decade. After the global financial crisis in 2008, that is what got the birth of Bitcoin, and we started to see the first sort of blockchain protocols coming out. Ownership is becoming important because centralization in the digital world was important to achieve economies of scale. Like I think it was introduced that Web2 was more about interaction on a almost real-time basis. You could comment, share, like anyone else's post, videos, etc. So the amount of data we needed to handle was so large that we had to centralize it to achieve economies of scale, particularly because these businesses in the beginning are actually very big loss-making businesses, right? So you could not really go towards a decentralization. Web 1 was, by the way, decentralized, right? So we moved from a decentralized net in Web 1 to a centralized net in Web 2 to enable all of this. But I think the pendulum has swung too far. People do want autonomy. People do want ownership. It comes with its own cons as well. But that's the relevance of ownership, with the largest relevance being that, consider that today, if you are using WhatsApp or Facebook, you are a renter rather than an owner of a property, right? And we will all know that if you feel like you are an owner, your actions towards making that ecosystem better are a lot more than if you feel you are just renting the place, right? Whether that's real estate, whether that's a startup. This is the reason why every startup today gives ESOPs to all their team members, because you want to make everyone feel as an owner and empowered so that the effort they put to create the value in the ecosystem is a lot more, and everyone wins in that case, right? All the team members wins, investors win, founding team wins, etc. So that's the other reason why decentralization is really important. The last aspect, which is integrated economics. So you will have to bear with me a little bit while I explain this to you. See, humans are social creatures. Our survival has actually depended on the fact that we live as a community and we have a safety in numbers, which is also why we were able to survive against other human species like Neanderthals, which used to live in much smaller tribes compared to us Homo sapiens. Very well, obviously, not only documented, but told in the book called Sapiens by Yuval. So if anyone is interested in understanding that and understanding the power of religion for what we have done as a community, would highly recommend reading that book. And because we are social creatures, we crave a lot of social currency, right? We really care about our social status, number of LinkedIn connections we have, who do I know in the society, how well known I am in the society. And Web2 businesses have really capitalized on that, right? So whether it's Facebook or TikTok, your social currency has been the reason why people move to that particular network, right? The difficulty social currency businesses have is that it's tough to tie it to tangible or actual monetary currency, right? So businesses like TikTok, Facebook struggle to find ways to monetize. On the other end, businesses which are based on monetary currency, like your Amazon, like travel app, like Make My Trip, fintech apps, they find it difficult to create a community which will come there for the social currency, right? So you now have a lot of social commerce coming up with Misho. You have a lot of the businesses which are dealing with monetary currency, putting in video content, putting in games to increase, this idea of social currency within their app. And one of the things that Web3 is enabling, because you already have ownership, is that they will enable you to combine and integrate social currency and monetary currency ecosystems and economics, right? Which means that it will become really, really powerful for you to start doing things. What are the examples of that? The examples of that is, like consider TripAdvisor. For people who have used it, TripAdvisor purely worked on a social currency. Like I have given a lot of reviews on it. I take a lot of reviews on TripAdvisor. Mostly they have done that by giving me level badges to make it higher, right? But a lot of people know that when TikTok was forming their network, or what a lot of short video apps in India do, is that they actually pay the creators directly, right? It would have actually been very nice if businesses like um, TripAdvisor not only gave me level and badges, but maybe gave me further discounts on certain hotels I want to go and stay with, or paid me some money, or gave me a token of TripAdvisor, which I could monetize at a later stage. So that my incentive is not just the social currency, but my incentive also becomes that monetary currency. And then people can actually optimize what they want, right? Some people would want the level, badges, social status a lot more than some people who would want the money aspect more. And from both angles, you're driving people to create content, contribute to the community in a positive manner. And that's where this ownership of tokens and this integration of social currency and economic currency becomes important. So now let me just cover what does this mean to sort of careers, and would then love to open it to questions and happy to delve into any area in a lot more detail. So again, looking at the three pillars, let's first look at immersion. So when you're looking at immersion, that's where you're looking at sort of understanding more 3D softwares, right? So whether that's Unity, whether that's Unreal Engine, where you are actually going to use them to show your 3D models, create these great 3D worlds, whether that's on mobile, AR, VR, you would need to be a developer there. If you want to get into animation, 3D modeling, Blender is sort of the way to go. Open source software will start getting, already is very popular, but will start getting a lot more attention to create great animation and great 3D assets. If you want to work on creating one of these platforms, your best bet is to be a master in C++, because that will give you a great base to be able to generate and create frameworks where you are able to actually create such frameworks which could compete with a Unity, or you could even build your infrastructure on top of Unity, you would need to have good understanding of C++ as sort of a fundamental language, right? If you are not a software developer, but you still want to do this, creative positions in terms of 3D art, animators would be a lot more, right? I think the opportunity for India is similar to what we saw in Web 1, where a lot of the development was taking place from India for the world, which is why HCL, Wipro, Infosys, TCS started to emerge and become big businesses. I think we see a same trend happening in India for sort of gaming, right? So we are already doing a lot of outsourcing for the biggest game studios in the world. When I say we, I mean India, not Totality. And I think we're going to see that trend a lot more. We have a lot of great talent in terms of creative talent as well for 3D art, animation, etc. And I think that's where, if people are more minded towards those careers, that will be very important, and that sort of covers your aspect of immersion. The second aspect of ownership is where blockchain development actually comes into the picture. So if you really want to do smart contract development, I would say your best bet is to first understand JS, JavaScript really well. Once you do that, you'll be able to pick up, Solidity quite well to create contracts on the Ethereum network. But also what I'll say is what has to be probably stronger, um, which is always the case in software development, is your knowledge of algorithms, right? So what in smart contracts, the difficulty isn't writing the actual code. Because you have a lot of tools like Morales, which can actually help you write the actual code itself, right? So the format of the language and the actual functions you use is not the important thing, but like it happens in every software development, the key is to figure out all the algorithms and all the scenarios which can be accessed in the smart contract, right? Because the smart contract is immutable, i.e. you can't change it, it becomes even more important that you have thought of every possibility from the very beginning itself, which is a really tough job, right? In Web 2, the advantage we had is if you have released a mobile app, it's very common, which is why it's always said like, fail fast or break things quickly, etc., because you launch, there are problems, that's okay. You always have the opportunity to send an upgrade. But now, because you're dealing with immutable contracts, you do not have that luxury. You can't say that, oh, I'll launch my smart contract, some things screwed up. You can't send an update to the smart contract. The other thing is that people will end up losing a lot of money. So directly, a lot of money is at a lot of risk with these smart contracts. So now you need people who can really analyze all sorts of decisions at the very beginning itself, rather than working fast. I mean, analyzing everything plus fast would be great, but analyzing everything at the beginning is much more important than moving really quickly, right? So this is a little bit of a change with what people have been doing in Web 2, and this understanding of algorithms and how this data is flowing and architecture of that data flow becomes even more important than what we have seen in Web 2. So what we have found in general is people who have been really good at visualizing backend systems, as an example, are really good at becoming smart contract developers, right? So if you generally were more, interested in backend development, in figuring out that entire architecture, what the servers would do, how the data would flow, how you would store data, you generally have a better mind at becoming a smart contract developer, because that's the way your entire ecosystem is now going to interact with each other. Um, Obviously, within ownership, there is also an aspect of how are you going to create UIs. We obviously have systems like web3.js, next.js, which I did not cover in, and 3.js are more immersive ways to sort of start building your websites as well. And they are being used quite a lot. So again, a foundation in JavaScript is what would be ideal here. Um, the other aspect here is obviously people who love Python or who love data query on-chain analysis would start becoming a lot more important. See, one of the things we saw in Web 2 is that data has been taken for granted, because thanks to what Facebook and Google have done, every company now takes all your data. Um, Obviously, you agree to it because everyone says that here is a tick that you agree to all this data. But if you don't agree to it, you can't access the app. And from a convenience perspective, we all agree for our data to be shared. That is definitely going to change in Web3. It's already changing. People will be a lot more conscious about sending all their data. And secondly, people will also be conscious of you analyzing, storing their data in a centralized place and then analyzing it, right? So the difference will now become you won't have the luxury to be able to just take a data dump, keep working on that data for a long time. You would have to do on-chain analytics. And if not done in the right manner, it will become very, very expensive for you to keep doing it, right? So here again, you would have to know um, a lot more in terms of what AI modules, what sort of data and analytics modules do you actually give in the contracts themselves that they can analyze that information and send you the insights after they have collected that insight. You don't have the luxury of, let's say, storing every little event and interaction and figuring out later whether that was relevant or not. Because of decentralization, data transfer and data validation is now very expensive, which is a con of sort of decentralization and ownership, that your costs are actually going up, right? The last aspect, which is integrated economics, is also quite interesting because if you are a psychology student, a sociology student, an economics student, this is where actually you start shining, right? Because combining social currency and a monetary currency is not something that has actually happened at all. And if done successfully, this alone is probably going to be trillions of dollars worth of business, right? Like what Web2 has shown us is social currency was the way to create your largest sort of ways. So if you see in the world, the two areas where a lot of value is getting created, it's social network oriented businesses and it's fintech oriented businesses, right? We are now talking about almost combining these two pure social currency and monetary currency businesses into one. And it's going to be a very interesting sort of factor. This is where you need a team of people who understand, as I said, economics, human behavior, sociology, philosophy, some sort of law, because you're really setting up how people will interact with each other. So for example, in our team, which looks after this tokenomics, I come from a finance background. I was a hedge fund manager for over a decade. We have a behavioral scientist. We have game developers. We have people from actual design background who are really looking at user experience and how users will actually be able to use it or understand it more intuitively. And this itself, from an art and science perspective, like tokenomics alone, will be a sort of a really interesting field. And my gut would say that, like people are doing MBA, you would actually get people specializing only in tokenomics to understand how to handle sort of economy, right? In a way, the DAOs or the decentralized autonomous organizations being created are decentralized central banks for each of the ecosystems, right? And so as these ecosystems grow, they will start getting more and more um, power to decide what happens to those ecosystems going forward. And people who would have those skill sets will be extremely highly valued. So that's a little bit from my side about the overview of Web3 and how I look at the division in terms of immersion, ownership, and integrated economics. Would love to answer any questions that people have, and in particular understand what concern, thoughts people have with regards to Web3 from whatever interactions you have had with these ecosystems so far. I don't know who the moderator is. Someone would have to unmute Nabil so that he could ask a question.
Hello. Hello, sir.
Hi, Nabil. Yes.
Yes, sir. So you talked about 3D software and game development in 3D systems. So is it similar to like PUBG or Fortnite sort of systems, or is it like extended reality based systems?
Yeah, so see, like I said, my very strong view is that it'll be a lot similar to PUBG and Fortnite systems, because I think what will happen is that for the immersion we need, we are gonna like a game is enough, right? Like I always give this example that because this entire concept of metaverse came from a book called Snow Crash, which was written in the mid 90s by Neil Stephenson, right? So if people want to really understand the origin of metaverse, even cryptocurrency and virtual reality, highly recommend that you read that book for everyone here. Um, and in that book, obviously, they are showing, like they show in Ready Player One, the movie and the book also, that we have created this digital twin system where we are really spending more time in this extended or virtual reality as a digital twin. Now, that twin could look like me, it could look like any animal or any other alien sort of creature, right? The reality is that, as I said, VR systems are very expensive economically, but also very expensive in terms of labor that you put in, right? Like imagine playing a PUBG game with your headset where you literally have to walk and move your hands to do all the stuff, right? It's very taxing in terms of physical effort. You're definitely very few people will be able to do it for 2 to 3 hours a day, right? Which is probably the average time that a lot of PUBG lovers would spend on that game itself, right? Even doing it for 30 minutes every day is a task, right? And because nature has given us the most efficient tools, which are our hands, your UI to these systems will remain through your hands, which is actually your mobile device, right? Could we have a specialized mobile device for the metaverse only? Probably. It could have, more integrated systems to access the blockchain, maybe more secure. Maybe it has a mode where you have sort of a wallet inside it as a security measure, so that people don't have to buy these cold wallets separately. I don't know. That is definitely a possibility. We see mobile phones created for gamers specifically, but in terms of software, this is why my belief is that it'll be more like PUBG and Fortnite than it'll be like XR or VR.
Another question in along the same lines is that right now, if we were to make such a system, it will be centralized. So how much time would it take to actually make such games, like such character-based systems, decentralized?
So, a very good question. See, I think you are absolutely right. Like right now, and I think for the next 5 odd years, we would see that this interaction layer is going to remain centralized, right? Like what we have to understand, for anyone who has developed games, you would understand that even today, after all the technology development, creating a server where 100 people can interact with each other is already challenging, right? So PUBG, Fortnite have stopped at 100. Roblox is experimenting with something which is 1,000. There are a lot of companies, by the way, which have raised billions of dollars, which are touting that they are creating an on-chain system where all 7 billion people will be able to interact with each other. One, I don't believe that for 1 second. Two, I don't even think it's needed, right? Like, I think this utopian world where I could meet anyone is sort of utopian, right? And also, do I really need all the data on chain? Like if I'm in PUBG and shooting you, does the trajectory of my bullet need to get calculated on chain and get verified on chain? I think it's a little too much, right? Like even when we talk about our physical security, it's not like each of us move around with an actual security guard, right? At points where we congregate, where we feel the risk is high, we have security, right? Similarly, for your data security, some data would be more valuable than other data, right? So your financial, your actual tokens, where are they stored? When you actually do these token transactions, your actual sort of real life to on-chain data mapping, right? Because the reality is government would want to know what transactions you're doing. So there will be a layer where Anshul Rustagi's MetaMask wallet, where that mapping exists, will be held by the government, right? So all of those are very sensitive data and will be maintained on chain with a lot higher security. A lot of the gaming interaction doesn't need to be on chain, in my opinion. It is a nice to have. Like if once we have that system, would it be great? Yes. I mean, today we can't even handle like 100,000 people playing a word game together, right? Let alone playing a game complicated as PUBG where even on a centralized basis, we can't get 1,000 people to play with each other, right? Like the way a millions of people plays, it's a number of rooms created of 100 people each, right? So I don't think it's going to happen anytime in the near future. I'll at least put a 5-year timeline. The way we are building Zyneverse is that it's a on-ramp, off-ramp of on-chain to centralized, on-chain to off-chain system. Your gaming interaction will predominantly be centralized and off-chain, and your end data storage of your avatar upgrade, lives, tokens, rewards will be on-chain. And I think that's the practical way of building it today, and at least for the next foreseeable future.
Sure, sir. Thank you.
We have a question in the chat box. Yashika is asking, can you tell us a bit more about blockchain technology?
Okay. I think a good way to understand what a blockchain is, so I guess the first question is, why did we need a blockchain, right? Like we know the final use of it, but is there no way for us to recreate that in the data flow that we have? At the end of it, a blockchain is also verifying a particular ledger, right? So what was the need? The need became that, why do we need any centralized body to verify an interaction, which could be a commercial interaction, could be any promise I made you, could be a social relationship or a promise. Why is it that we need a centralized body? And the reason is that that's how you solve for trust, right? So trust is predictability, right? Like if I promised you something, it's a predictable outcome, and that is what we are calling trust here, right? So if I'm a company and you are providing me, let's say, a web development service, the reason I sign a contract with you is, to begin with, I have to, have the visibility that you will deliver on the promise you made me. You need to have the deliverability that I will pay you the money that I owe you or I have promised you. And the reason to sign a contract is, if that doesn't happen, then we at least can go to a centralized authority, which is our courts, to say that, listen, this person made me this promise. I trusted the person. We validated that trust using a contract. And now you need to make sure that those promises are fulfilled, whichever party is breaking the promise, right? What we are doing in terms of blockchain is actually codifying this trust, right? So rather than us going to the code, we have actually codified this trust in terms of a smart contract. And when these promises are objectively or milestones are objectively met, the promises are automatically and in a codified manner executed, right? And the way to do this, one way to do this was proof of work, which Bitcoin did. So they said that, hey, if you want to attain trust in this system, you need to come solve for these cryptographic puzzles. As you solve for these cryptographic puzzles, we would know that you are a good actor. You have put a lot of effort. You have put a lot of work. And hence, for putting that work, we will give you that reward. And some part of that work is that once you finish that puzzle, we know that you're putting that effort. We will also validate certain transactions in a decentralized random manner, right? So proof of work is not the only way. Obviously, we have proof of stake, which predominantly in a simpler manner to understand is, you are putting some money at risk. If you remain a good actor, we will give you certain rewards to verify transactions, to become, solve for that trust. If you don't, you become a bad actor, you try to do certain manipulation, we will confiscate that entire money. So you basically are putting your stake or your money at risk to actually remain a good actor. You were putting labor, work, now you're putting money. It could be many different things. You could put attendance, you could put gaming, you could put many different things as proof for you to actually solve for this codified trust, or what can easily be called a consensus protocol, right? So obviously blockchain has many layers. The big layer change is this consensus protocol, that which is the codified trust part that I'm actually explaining to you. And we will see a lot more consensus mechanisms, right? Like proof of work came, proof of stake came. People are working on proof of gaming. They are working on proof of puzzle solving, proof of customer success, a proof of sales, etc., etc. So a lot of the incentive mechanisms that already exist in the real world will be adapted by the blockchain to really codify them, right? And then you don't have to depend, like a salesperson in a lot of places get paid based on the sales they do. You would not have to depend on some central body saying, we verify that the sales is done and here is your commission. It'll all be done in a codified manner, as an example, going forward. And that's really the promise of sort of blockchain and why it is very important for Web3 in general.
Yeah, thank you for that. Does anybody else have any questions? If you do, you can type in the chat box or raise your hand and unmute yourself and ask the question. Yeah, till people are thinking up of questions, I also had a question myself. You have created this platform called the Zionverse. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So Zyneverse is a user-generated games platform. Like I think you said at the beginning, the way you should think about it is this is now, gaming is already the new social network, and a similar thing will happen in Web3, where the places where people congregate and virtually hang out will be 3D environments where you can game with each other. You could even have a virtual coffee with each other, could sit together and just see a movie, chat, audio chat there, or literally just hang out doing nothing. Like you could watch, sunrise, moonrise, even 2 or 3 sunrising, moonrising in sort of virtual galaxies that are created. So our idea is we have created a game stack which is very similar to Minecraft, actually quite inspired from Minecraft. It's a voxel based system where you can create your own 3D maps, your own games. If you want to make it public for other people to enjoy, you have that option to do it. If you want to monetize them, we'll give you that option to do it. You keep the lion's shares of the revenue. As a platform, we take certain commission for enabling you to do that. And all the content we are creating is around Indian culture and mythology. So what we are really building is this infrastructure layer for people to create 3D assets, 3D maps, games, even Web3 schools, great art, and all of it should be related to Indian culture and mythology. And we think that in the very near future, within 2 years, a lot of your purchasing, business transactions, businesses connecting with their community will happen through platforms like Zyneverse, and we want to be the leaders of a decentralized metaverse in India.
That's really fascinating to hear. Anybody with any queries, please raise your hands or you can type in the chat box and I'll read out your questions. Yes, Nabil, you can unmute yourself and ask the question.
Yes. So you talked about like storing data on chain, off chain, like segregating it. So like, wouldn't it cost like a lot of time to bring it from off chain to on chain, like so on and so forth?
Wouldn't it take a lot of time to move data from on-chain to off-chain, you're saying?
Yes, sir. Like.
No, so see, what will happen is obviously we already know how to handle off-chain data, and that's very, very quick. In terms of writing data onto on-chain, it does take a little bit of time because it has to get verified, and that may take time. But you have to remember that since a lot of your interaction is going to be off-chain, data like a what's the right way to say it? Whatever activity you're doing off-chain, that data is already stored off-chain as a copy. So even if you make a copy on-chain, it will not stop you to keep doing those interaction off-chain, right? So even if it takes a little bit time, let's say it even takes 5 minutes, which is probably a good estimate of a time it takes to write that data, it will not stop you from doing any sort of transactions unless it's for something which is a lot more secure and you want it to be through your on-chain data, right? So for example, you could be earning a lot of currency in the game, you transfer that on-chain, now you're looking to go and sell that data via an on-chain transaction. You would have an option to do it off-chain as well, but you want to do it on-chain, that probably there you would have to wait for that 5 minutes for the data to get converted on-chain and then take you. But those use cases will keep reducing as sort of on-chain protocols become more efficient, hopefully.
So I meant like as in a shooting game, if we were to have the trajectory of the bullet, that would be calculated off chain, right? So and the game is being played on chain, right? So as in it's
no, the game is so okay. What do you mean by saying that the game is being being played on chain?
So as in we are playing it on the system that's decentralized, right?
Actually not. So see, the thing is, okay. So even in terms of NFTs, like forget gaming interactions, the number of data exchange you need is a lot more in terms of the gigabyte per second. But even with NFTs, right? Like say the data that is stored of the 2D art or the 3D art that you own, 99% of NFT collections and even the largest ones. So CryptoPunks, which became the most famous, the first famous NFT collection. Some of them are worth millions of dollars. Even that art is actually stored on a server, right? It's centralized. It's not even decentralized, right? So there is still the utopian world of everything becoming on chain and the reality of what is being executed is very worlds apart, right? So when you say that you're playing a game on chain, the idea is that it's still an on ramp, off ramp system, right? Your NFT is on chain. You come and connect your NFT to the game, but the gaming interactions are actually taking place on a centralized server, and then the data written back to you on chain. Does that make sense?
Yes, so like even the game is being played off chain. Like it's not possible for us to.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Like, see, right now, what happens even in a game like a PUBG or Fortnite is that two things happen, right? One, a calculation of your bullet trajectory, as an example, is taking place on your client device itself, whether that's your console or your mobile or your PC. And then there is a verification going on with the same game engine being played, your physics being played on the server itself. And then at some time they do a reconciliation, which if people are CSGO, Dota, or PUBG, Fortnite players, you would know that sometimes even if you have killed someone, they would suddenly respawn, and that kill won't be counted because they would say that there was an issue with client and server, and obviously the server always wins, right? So even true server-side implementation, which is what cloud gaming is promising, is not there yet, right? Like this is the promise of cloud gaming where all calculations actually happen on the server and only your rendering and input of the game is taken through the client itself. Whereas today, a lot of calculations are even happening on the client. It's not even purely centralized. Does that make sense, Nabil?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Right.
Yeah. I saw Sumit Kumar raising their hand. Sumit, if you could unmute yourself and ask the question.
Hello, sir. I have a question from crypto. So I want to know that how and who add values to the currency. Like we see, like value is every day going up and down. So how this is all is happening?
Okay, so see, one thing you have to understand is when you're looking at value of anything, there is an intrinsic value and a future value, right? What is intrinsic value? Intrinsic value is something which is a lot more deterministic, i.e., if you knew that this company is going to make X amount of profits and you can determine it out, you do a discounted cash flow and you determine the value. Now, pre-VCs becoming big and pre-tech startups, a lot of value in stocks and assets you would invest in was intrinsic value, right? Which is why anyone here who is interested in stocks would read about net present value, discounted cash flow mechanisms quite well, because you could forecast certain things, discount it and say, here it is, right? But what happened is that everyone started to understand that, hey, this future value, which is definitely more difficult to predict, but is actually multiple times the discounted cash flow value, is something that people would want to bet on. And that's where sort of digital ecosystems with network effects started getting created. Now, what are network effects? If people don't know, if for all of you who are interested in technology space, you would need to know network effects as the number one thing which creates value of any ecosystem, right? So network effect is that the value, like in a pure sort of two ways to say it, is that the value of an ecosystem is considered to be proportional to the square of the number of people in that ecosystem. That's a very broad rule of thumb. Um, sort of Metcalfe's law. It's actually equal to the nodes, but I'm just simplifying it by saying that it's equal to the square of the number of people. The other way to look at it is, the more people already on the network, the more valuable it is for you to incrementally come onto that network, right? A great example is when WhatsApp's this data privacy issue happened a couple of years back. A lot of people, like including me, moved to Signal, right? But the problem was only 20 to 25% of my network was on Signal, right? So I was having to use both WhatsApp and Signal, even though I wanted to be on Signal. Because my network was on WhatsApp, I had to move back to WhatsApp. I have uninstalled Signal now, right? Another great example is, this is a known story that Jeff Bezos, Amazon, tried to actually beat eBay, right? They created another business like eBay, exactly like eBay, and they were not able to beat it, even though they were a better product, because the number of people selling and the number of people buying, which is the network, already was very large on eBay. Why is this important? Any value of the token, or NFT, is directly proportional to the network effect it can create for that ecosystem, right? So your bet of Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, Lakshmi NFT, which we have done, Shakti tokens, which we are about to release next month, all is related to whether you think that these businesses could create that ecosystem, right? Now, here comes the tricky part. Because this is future value, you also can't wait for it to actually come, right? Because at that point of time, the value generated will go up so much exponentially higher that you are willing to take that risk much earlier, right? I.e., if you want to wait for, say, Ethereum to have 100 billion people on a daily active basis, you will probably end up paying trillions of dollars in terms of valuation for that. So then the system becomes that you have to almost gaze into a crystal ball, given the team, given what traction they have so far, given your view, talking to other people, you are now taking a bet that can they create that future value, and take that bet early, which is also why it's very volatile, right? Because there is nothing intrinsic about it. It's a view. That view, if it goes bullish, goes up a lot. If there is a change in sentiment, it drops a lot. And that's why you have cryptocurrencies to be very, very volatile.
Okay, so understand.
Great. If there are no more questions, Archita, then would be probably great to end it here. And it was a pleasure sort of being here.
It was really a pleasure having you. This is like the last call for any questions that anybody might have. If you're too shy to say unmute yourself, you can still type in the chat box. Anybody? Yeah, I guess nobody has any questions. Thank you, Mr. Rustaggi, for this really enlightening session. I know that everybody here enjoyed and was really informed by the webinar. Thank you all for joining us. And yeah, we'll just end it here. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Asita. Take care. Bye.
Thank you, sir.